Okay, so let's go ahead and just do a little bit of case studies. We'll do this a little bit more in depth in upcoming module because we'll talk about more color and light and different things. But let's just talk about this right now. So if we come in here, I think it's important to note that when we look at this, it looks like there's a lot of color, and there is, but it's really a restricted palette, very, very restricted. Okay, so if we come in here and we just start eyedropping, right? And when I do samples of this, if I'm using colorist, I like to have on monochromatic because it makes it easier to see what you're getting. But look, if I click on this, we see this red orange. I come down, right? Let's get into the skin. Okay, you're red orange, and now you're going to this orange. Got it? Red orange. Look at this. This feels like it's green, but it's not green. It's yellow. Okay. All right, so let's get over here. So now we have this yellow green, red orange, right? Yellow green. There's an accent, which is a blue green. Okay, where's this? Okay, that's green. Okay, it looks like yellow green. We come through. And so what you're looking at pretty much is, you could say this is analogous because I saw that color go from about here to the most extreme over here. So it could be analogous, or you could say it's analogous to about here and then jumps to an accent. You'll notice there was only one real blue-green that's this intense. Cyan looking color is right here. It looks like maybe in the earrings, right? But it's hard to know because it's in such a small spot. But I would say it's there because it's there to draw attention up top on both of them to connect them. Okay, but let's just say, okay, if we are dealing with these colors here, right? This is really important because by clipping your colors within these palette ranges is how you're going to get everything to hold together. Now, the key is, let's say, for example, if I'm using this red, magenta, right? And if I brought this over here, I'm going to make it real saturated for a second, right? Just by looking at this image, if I come in here, and let's crank this up a little bit. Sure there's no selection. And what layer am I on? Oh, not on the right layer. That's why we can't see it. Okay. So if you look at this, you can see by me putting this saturation of color in there, you know it's going to work, right? If I pick any of these colors within here, you know it's going to work, whether it's muted or saturated, right? It's all going to work. They all are going to flow within each other. Okay, so these greens, even before I sample that green, just by what I saw it came over here. And when I mix natural greens, I try not to go here, right? When I think of nature, greens are, for me, are going to be about here, maybe here, but here, and you mute the colors down. You bring them really far down like this, right? And so this, let's see where I'm at. So I'm not that far off. You can see this is a little warmer. Let's shift it over. And all of a sudden it becomes cooler. If I take it over a little bit more, it's a little cooler, but look, it starts to fall into that range. So if I just went from here to here, that's analogous. Analogous can allow cools to blend in with the warms. So that's a really important thing to note. Okay, and then by using this accent down here, which is really more cyan, blue-green, by having that in here, it draws attention. But key point is it's desaturated tremendously, because if it were punched up just a little bit, our eye is going to go to it because it is the accent, right? Same value, but the intensity is brighter. It's the one accent. It's the thing that's different, right? That's what causes it to come forward. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so we have another image. Okay, so let's look at the color. So here we have blue, purple, right, ultramarine. Notice when we move along the edge here, the temperature changes. Look at this, right? So to me, I think that's fantastic. That's one of the things that I always look for. If you look in here, is the temperature changing? Look at this. In certain parts of this, it's not the same temperature. It shifts a little bit, so that makes it have visual interest. All this little variation in here is important, Okay, but let's look. So we went this blue, 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 violet, violet, right? Look, this is not white, it's blue, violet, right? We perceive it as white, but it's blue, violet, open shade, open shade. Remember that? We talked about that. Open shade, right? This becomes a little bit more magenta, more blue, violet. What is this? Okay, it jumps up. So we go from here to here. Is that an accent or is this analogous? For me, I think it's all analogous, right? Look at this. That's not yellow. Not to say that there won't be yellow in here, but right now it's yellow-orange, right? So that tells me from here down there, it's analogous, okay? And if you just look across the board, what are we staying in? That's the color range everywhere, right? Look at this, everything. Their hair, it's not blue-gray, right? It's warm color taken to a gray color. Whenever you do that, it'll feel cool. And look, all of this. What about this green back here? Is this green? Nope. It's yellow that's muted, right? Look at this. It's not green. This is not green, right? You would think it's green, but it's not green. And this is what I want to get across. Color is relative. Don't think of colors as, oh, it's a green tree. It's relevant. You pick your color palette that you're going to use, and all you have to do, if it's too raw and it doesn't work, mute it, add gray into it, make it dark and add gray, and it'll start feeling like the color you want it to be. It's a trick. It's something called simultaneous contrast. This is introduced by a Frenchman named, and I'm going to butcher his name, Chevreul. He was a tapestry guy. And he's the one who created the whole idea of optically mixing through pointillism, through thread and yarn. And then he wrote a whole book on this. And you can actually still get this book. And then the Impressionists got a hold of this book. And that's what led the whole breakout of Impressionism. They based it on this guy. Okay. So if you look, we go through here. Oops. We're looking, right? It's all analogous, but look at this. Here's your accent. Blue, green, right? This is the one area where we start to get that jump. So we went all around here and then boom, over here. And what do you know? Our eye always wants to go to accent, right? You'll notice that the focal point is right here. That's where we're supposed to look at, right? And so that's where he made us look. And so if you look how muted this is, it is so muted. What if you brought it over here? It would scream off the page. Come over here. Not as bad. Get it over here. I want it, but just to sit back. Now look over here. If I put that over here, it's a little dark in that light area, so it wouldn't work. So if I were painting this myself, I would take that same color and I would make it maybe lighter so it doesn't draw as much attention. So I manipulate and I trick the viewer. Okay, so we're looking at Velázquez. Okay, so I love this guy's stuff. I know some people don't like these old paintings, but it's still irrelevant. It's all learning experience, okay? So if you look at this, and the colors, this is not exactly accurate, but it doesn't really matter. The still principle is going to apply. Let's look. Look at this. Red, orange. You notice I'm never really talking so much about here. I'm always looking at the outside hue because that's what matters. I need to know what hues we're staying within. So he's basically already starting from here and going around a little bit, right? Think about the time period. These Baroque paintings, they had a lot of Venetian red. It may not have, like red, burnt sienna, Venetian red, you know, colors like that. And so it's very limited palettes, right? Using blue back then, you had to have money for that. I mean, it was very expensive. That's why you saw that only in a lot of royal portraits and things like that. Look at this. See this right here? See how that feels cool? That's not very cool. It's more of that green. So what's over here? So it's green. Now, this, to be realistic with you, honestly, it's probably with real paint, it's just yellow added with a little bit of black, and that's what's creating that illusion of that green with real paint. But you can see it's all relatively analogous. No accents, okay? Look at this. There we have a little bit of that green color, really muted down. That's it, right? There's nothing going on here. Just very simple palette, right? Is there a little bit of saturation right here? But that's not really saturated. It's saturated for this painting, right? That's saturated for this painting. But if we actually took it over here, it can get more saturated, right? So keep in mind, color is relative. So let's move on to the next one. Okay. So hopefully you're seeing a common theme, why these paintings work. And it's really important because it's something that I didn't really grasp when I was in school. When I graduated, I did understand color really well in terms of creating a lot of dramatic impact, but I didn't understand the subtleties and the complexities of how much color you could get from just a very limited palette. And I think that's when things start to really change for me. So when I look at this, right? So look, you already know that whenever there's someone with flesh color, almost always you're going to start out with this red-orange or orange kind of palette. It doesn't mean that you have to do everything always that way, but when you think about these kind of classical paintings, you're always going to see that. Okay, so look at this. It's just very limited palette. Okay, so look at this. See these cools in here? Just add it with gray, so we're not putting blue in there, right? Let's see what happens if you did use blue, right? So there we go. Let's bring over here to this violet. Okay. Now, I just left it in the same spot, right? Down here. But do you notice that it starts to come forward off the page? If you really look at that, right? It's coming forward, right? So let's go back and understand why. Okay, so we're taught that cool colors recede. But these cool colors really are not receding, right? If I put, let's say, like a cool blue back here, let's even just do this. I just want you to see, right? Do those colors come forward? What about this? What if it's desaturated? What about that? It's muted. Why are these cool colors coming forward? We're taught that cool colors recede. Well, reality is cool colors do not just fall back. The real rule that I go by is that if you have a dominant key of paint, sea of orange, yellow, red, whatever, and when you go and put an accent down, our eye goes to the contrast point. Always. So if you don't grasp that, a lot of times what happens is when people want to cool something down and try to create like a cool reflections in the face in here, what happens is the reflection becomes so dominant that's all we look at is the reflected light, the bounce light, the rim light. So you have to be careful with that. So if I wanted something different, and I wanted to have a cool reflected light, but I don't want it to be the dominate the image, that's when you take these colors and you bring it over here to the gray, and it's going to feel cool, right? And that becomes my cool light, right? And this settles in, and now I see the reflected light, but I'm able to get off of the reflected light and move into the image. Now, you may not know it, but what I just told you right there is gold. Replay that part over and over again. Because unless you're doing some sort of animation that you really wanted to pop out, super like dramatic, then do that. And doesn't mean that you don't do this, what I'm telling you right now, make it cool. I only do that cool method if it's an area that I want you to look at, because now I look at that, right? But if I wanted you not to look at it, I'm going to use a different temperature and different value, right, to blend. Keep that in mind. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, bourgeois. Okay, so now I think your eye is starting to be trained to see this, right? So those are not, they can't be real greens, right? I'm just looking at it from a distance, like they can't be, right? Right, look at this. very analogous, right? Even this feels like lavender. It's just a cooled down red. Look at this. This is a very minimal palette. All right. And here, isn't that interesting? In here, in the deepest parts, he used a cooler, it's dark, but he used a cooler red. That's the only time you see a shift, a major shift. It was right here, and he used that cool red so that it would go further back. And that's when he's using the cool colored receipt. But why does that work? Because it's cool within the same family. It's all analogous. That's why that works. Okay, come over here. And again, it's basically orange, just mute it down. Okay, and again, we already know if we come over here and start putting this down in here, look at the difference. Right, that's really muted. It's not a bad green, but look at that green. It's a completely different green. And see how it comes out at us and it doesn't settle back? I come back over here and accept that as green for this image. And it's for this image. Not every image is going to be the same. Boom, that's my greens for this painting. Okay, so here a little bit more color, but it's still really muted, right? It's amazing how much brightness we are getting from these very desaturated paintings, right? But this one I think is great because you can see the accent, right? So this is predominantly in the blue, green, cyan, blue greens, right? This is really dominant in this area. Look at this. It feels very warm, but it's not really warm. It's just shifting up a little bit and it's muted. So now we're doing the same kind of painting, but in a reverse. We're using the blue, green, cyan as your dominant color. And then, okay, what is this? Yellow. Okay, so we're going all the way up around here, analogous. And then, boom, we start to make major jumps. So your accent in this painting is red. And you can see clearly that it's done that way. Look, red, red, orange. Same thing. Look at this. Why does this work for skin color? Because the intensity is brought way out of it. The more you take it towards the gray, it becomes cool. You crank it up over here. It's bright color for the skin, right? You see that? Over the top, you bring it over here. It's the same color, right? But just mute it, and now we accept it, right? If it's too much, you just bring it over here. But now you're in that ballpark. Boom, works, easy. Super easy. I hope you're seeing how easy this is. It's just crazy, right? So now, without even looking, I already know we were working over here somewhere. So if I came down here and wanted to put some color in here, I already know that I'm not working over here. I'm going to work over here somewhere, and the only thing I need to be aware of is value, right? So if I decided, okay, well, if I'm going to go darker, I got to see, well, where's this value appropriate? Okay, so this has a little bit of cooler, so this might be my little cool accents right around certain spots just to kind of pop it. If I wanted to go darker, I'd just go in a little bit darker in a couple spots, but not too much, but just to create a little bit of eye flicker, right? Then let's say, oh, I want to make it, let's go back this way to dial it back in, and these are all lighter. So I would just sample the color to see what the value is, right? So I see this value is right around here. So what if I want to come back over here just to give myself a little bit of temperature change? I just make sure it's consistent. So if this whole thing is being flushed with one value in temperature, that means if there was a groove here like that, in here is where I would give it a slightly different temperature, like in the shadows of the material. And because I do that, that's what's going to tell me that it's going up, down, and that's what's going to give us the sense of logic, even if you don't paint real folds. You don't have to paint real folds. It's just painting that illusion of the accordion, of black accordion. You know what I'm talking about? Like the musical instrument is like when you have an accordion. And then the other side is white. Actually, it should be this. Let me just make sure I do this right so I don't lose anybody, right? And then if we go back to the white again, is this, right? It's that staggering like that. Every time you paint something, I'm always thinking about one side is black. It's the same black everywhere. White is white on the other side. There you go. That's my pattern. Now, I may go back in here, do little nuances within that black and little nuances of white, but that's my value pattern. And so when we come down here, we look at this, right? Right? And so if you do a temperature shift the way I just told you, like, so the light is actually on this side of the image and the dark is in here. And that's why this is getting the temperature shift. And that's just it, universal. I don't care what you do, flat style, painterly style, hyper-realistic style. Principle is exactly the same. All that style stuff, don't worry about that. That's just people making you think that that matters. It's all the same. So you should be able to shape shift anytime. I could do any kind of artwork because the principles are basic and they are the same universally. Okay, so I love this image. I love them all. I love everything that has great color, well thought out color. So what I love about this is just, you can see you're having a little bit more variety of color that's brought into this, right? We can see yellow oranges, right? And we see this blue greenish color. Then we see red, right? And, you know, it's not extreme, but this is as close to what you're going to get to something that I'm showing you at least, is this sort of, there we go. Sort of like a triadic color palette. This is really, really close to that. Maybe not as extreme. It might be something closer to this. But even with that said, if we just came in here, and let me just go, so I don't want to lock you into that mindset right now, but if you just look, you're still getting that same red-orange. You're always in here for the skin. It's just muted. So keep that in mind. It's just muted, right? Okay, and so then we look at the background. You got this cool blue. So this is why I said it's almost like a primary, but then you get some of these more cyans. Do we have full green? Not really. It shifts a little bit over that way. But yeah, you get this really beautiful color. But what I love about it is this color it's in the back, but way more muted and subdued, or at least it feels like it's in the back, right? And you got it in the front, and it's just, because of the value pattern is working. Value, I want to clarify this, value is the most important. Understanding the light intensity and all that is the most important. And color is that thing that just hits people over the head and just is a slam dunk, right? But look at the value and how this works. Okay? That's what we're looking for. So now when we have this solid of a value pattern, and all we're doing is the background is more muted and darker. That's just the general rule. And it's warmer as the dominant. So if you look at this, it feels more of that yellow-orange. Okay, dominant yellow-orange. And then when we look at this, it's more dominant with the cool color. So basically it's orange over blue. And the difference is now you're speckling, dropping in these little bits of blue in here. And then on this side, it's the opposite. You're putting those specks of the warmer tone. Brilliant. And then just as a design, because this is not even a design class, compositionally, you have pattern everywhere versus flat stillness of her skin. And it pops her out, right? That's like freaking amazing. Amazing. So I'm loving it, and I just think this is amazing. And you see those colors carried out throughout this whole image.